The storm outside raged like a restless beast, rain slashing against the city streets in relentless waves. Inside Lure, one of the most exclusive restaurants in Manhattan, the atmosphere was the opposite. Soft jazz played in the background, candlelight flickered against the glass walls, and well-dressed patrons spoke in hushed voices over gourmet meals. But Alexander Wolf barely noticed any of it. Seated in the farthest corner of the restaurant, he swirled the deep amber liquid in his glass, his sharp gaze staring blankly at the crystal reflections within. Whiskey had long since stopped warming him. It had been 3 years since his wife Isabel had died in a tragic car accident, 3 years since his world had turned to ash. A man like him, ruthless, powerful, accustomed to winning, had never been prepared for loss. And yet, no amount of wealth or power could bring Isabel back. He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. Why was he here tonight? Maybe because it was easier to lose himself in the sterile luxury of a restaurant than to go home to a penthouse that still felt like a tomb. "Sir, may I get you another drink?" The voice was soft yet firm, carrying the slight rasp of someone who worked long hours. Alexander barely looked up. "No, his words died in his throat. His gaze had landed on her hand, more specifically, on the ring on her finger. His entire body went rigid. It wasn't just any ring. It was his late wife's wedding ring. A thunderous silence filled his ears. His breath caught. His shock cracked through the icy numbness he had worn for years. No. It couldn't be. His grip tightened around his glass as he forced himself to look at the woman wearing it. She was young, maybe in her mid-20s, with golden brown hair pulled into a loose ponytail. Her uniform, a crisp black dress with an apron, was standard for the restaurant staff. But there was something about her. Something striking. Her hazel eyes held quiet resilience, as if she carried burdens she never spoke of. For a second, she looked almost familiar, but that wasn't possible. Focus. The ring. Where did you get that? His voice came out rough, almost a growl. The waitress, Eleanor Carter, according to her name tag, blinked at him, confusion flickering across her face. I'm sorry. Alexander's heart pounded. He had seen that ring 1,000 times, traced its delicate engraving with his fingers while whispering promises into Isabel's hair. He had chosen it himself, a custom design, a one-of-a-kind piece. And it had disappeared the night she died. His voice was sharp. The ring. Where did you get it? Al instinctively pulled her hand back, curling her fingers. She glanced down, then back at him. It was a gift. From my grandmother. His pulse roared in his ears. A gift? That ring should have never been anywhere but on Isabel's hand, or buried with her. You're mistaken, he said, his voice dangerously low. That ring belonged to my wife. Al took a step back, her brows knitting in concern. Sir, I think there's some misunderstanding. My grandmother gave me this ring years ago. It's always been in my family. That's impossible, Alexander snapped. Anguish and something unnamed twisted inside him. Why was she lying? For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The restaurant buzzed softly around them, distant laughter, clinking glasses, the hum of conversation. But in their little corner, the world had stopped. Al hesitated, clearly debating whether to stay or leave. Then, with a nervous glance around, she exhaled and spoke carefully. Look, I don't know what this is about, but I have a shift to finish. If you'll excuse me. Wait. It wasn't a request. She paused, lips pressing together. Meet me after your shift, he said. Elle stared at him. Why? Now why would I do that? Because I need answers, Alexander said. His tone was controlled, but his jaw was clenched. And whether you believe it or not, you're wearing a dead woman's wedding ring. Elle stepped out of the restaurant's back entrance, hugging her coat tightly against the cold night air. She should have just gone home. She should not be meeting the intense, brooding billionaire who had interrogated her like she'd committed a crime. But something in his eyes had shaken her. She found him waiting by a sleek black car, leaning against it, watching her approach with an expression that sent a strange shiver down her spine. "You actually showed up," Alexander muttered. She crossed her arms. "I want to make something clear. I don't know who you think I am, but I don't appreciate being treated like a thief." Alexander's lips pressed into a thin line. "And I don't appreciate being lied to." Al exhaled. "I'm not lying. My grandmother gave me this ring. She told me it was special, that it was tied to love and loss." She shook her head. "But she never told me where it came from." Alexander studied her in silence. Her honesty unsettled him. If she was telling the truth, then there were even more questions than before. Because Isabel's ring, the ring he had placed on her finger the day they vowed forever to each other, had vanished the night she died. So how the hell did this woman have it now? He took a step closer. "I need to meet your grandmother." Elle stiffened. "Why?" "Because if there's even the slightest chance she knows something about that ring," his voice was firm, determined, almost desperate, "then I need to hear it." Al bit her lip, hesitating. Her grandmother had always been secretive about the past. She never spoke much about her younger years, only telling Elle that some things were better left in memories. But now Elle needed answers too. After a long pause, she exhaled. "Fine. I'll take you to her." Alexander gave a slow nod, his stormy blue eyes locked onto hers. "Tomorrow." As she turned and walked away, Elle couldn't shake the feeling that she had just stepped into something much bigger than herself. And Alexander, he knew, deep in his bones, that this woman, this stranger, was about to turn his world upside down. And he had no idea if he was ready for it. Elle stood outside her grandmother's cozy brownstone in Brooklyn, shifting nervously from foot to foot. The early morning air was crisp, the city still waking up around her. She wasn't sure why she had agreed to this. What was she even doing? She had met Alexander Wolf, a billionaire, less than 24 hours ago. He had accused her of wearing his dead wife's wedding ring, thrown piercing accusations her way, and now she was about to introduce him to her grandmother. It was ridiculous. And yet, as much as she wanted to walk away, there was a strange, unshakable pull toward this man. Toward his grief. Toward the intensity in his eyes when he looked at the ring on her finger, like it was his last tether to something he lost. "Elle," she muttered, shaking her head. "Just get this over with." A sleek black car pulled up to the curb, and her stomach twisted. The door opened and Alexander stepped out, dressed in a tailored navy suit, looking like he belonged in a boardroom, not on the worn brick steps of her grandmother's house. He looked out of place. Too sharp. Too polished. Too intense for this quiet Brooklyn street. But what unsettled Elle the most wasn't his presence, it was the way his blue eyes found hers instantly. As if he had been looking for her his whole life. She swallowed hard. "You actually came." "I told you I would," Alexander said, his voice calm but firm. Elle rolled her eyes. Billionaires aren't exactly known for keeping promises. A ghost of a smirk flickered across his lips. And waitresses aren't exactly known for wearing one-of-a-kind wedding rings belonging to dead women. Her amusement vanished. "Let's just go inside." Margaret Carter's house was nothing like Alexander's cold, modern penthouse. It was warm, cluttered, and smelled like cinnamon and old books. Elle led him to the small living room where an elderly woman sat in a worn-out armchair, flipping through a weathered photo album. Margaret looked up as they entered, her bright gray eyes sharpening with curiosity. "Elle, darling," she said, closing the album. "And who's this?" Elle hesitated before answering. This is Alexander Wolf. Margaret's hand stilled midair for the briefest second. Something flickered across her face, something unreadable, then, as quickly as it came, it was gone. A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Wolf. Alexander, perceptive as ever, didn't miss the hesitation. He sat down across from her, gaze steady. I appreciate you seeing me. Margaret folded her hands in her lap. Elle tells me you're interested in the ring I gave her. His jaw tightened. Yes. Margaret looked at Elle, then at Alexander, her expression unreadable. Finally, she sighed, sinking back into the chair. That ring, she murmured, almost to herself. I always knew it would bring someone back to me. Elle's breath hitched. Grandma? Margaret exhaled, closing her eyes briefly. Then she met Alexander's gaze. I suppose you deserve the truth. I was a nurse once, Margaret began, her voice distant, lost in memory. It was many years ago. A woman came to me in the middle of the night, soaked from the rain, shaking, clutching her stomach as if she were in pain. She was terrified. She kept saying she had made a mistake, that she had to go back, but she was too afraid. Alexander's fingers clenched. What was her name? Margaret's eyes softened. She said her name was Isabel. The name was a gunshot to the chest. Alexander inhaled sharply. Isabel? Elle stiffened beside him. Wait, you're saying the woman who gave you this ring was Isabel Wolf? Margaret nodded. She was desperate. She wouldn't tell me everything. Only that she had left something behind. Someone she loved. She said she had made a terrible mistake and didn't know how to fix it. Alexander's mind raced. None of this made sense. Isabel hadn't left him, she had died. The police had ruled it an accident. The car crash. Had they been wrong? He swallowed hard. Where did she go after that? Margaret hesitated. I don't know. She left before morning. But before she did, she pressed the ring into my hands and said, this belongs to love, but love doesn't belong to me anymore. A sharp pain twisted in Alexander's chest. Why would Isabel say that? Elle's voice was quiet. So you kept it all these years? Margaret smiled sadly. I kept it hoping one day someone would come looking for it. And now here you are. Silence filled the room. Alexander felt untethered, like the world had just shifted beneath his feet. Everything he thought he knew about Isabel's death was suddenly a lie. Had she really died, or had she left him? A war raged inside him, grief, betrayal, longing. He stood abruptly, running a hand through his hair. I need time to process this. Elle, who had been quietly absorbing everything, touched his arm gently. Alexander? The warmth of her touch jolted through him like an electric current. His eyes met hers, a storm crashing into sunlight. For the first time in years, he wasn't drowning. Elle's gaze was steady, searching. What now? Alexander exhaled slowly. I find out the truth. Because if there's even the slightest chance Isabel was alive before that crash, then someone lied to me. And I'm going to uncover every last secret, no matter the cost. Alexander sat in his penthouse office, staring at the gold wedding ring now sitting in the center of his desk. The sight of it still haunted him. For years, he had convinced himself that Isabel's death had been an accident. He had grieved, shattered by the loss of his wife, believing she had been ripped from him by fate's cruel hand. But now, an aging nurse in Brooklyn had told him Isabel had been alive long after she was supposed to be dead. That she had run away, not been taken. And that ring, the very ring she had promised to wear forever, had ended up on Elle's hand. Alexander exhaled sharply, tension coiling in his shoulders. Mr. Wolf? He looked up as his private investigator, Liam Carter, entered the office. Sharp and efficient, Liam had been by Alexander's side for years. "What did you find?" Alexander asked, his voice clipped. Liam set a folder down. "There's something you need to see." Alexander flipped it open, and his blood ran cold. Inside was a photo, a grainy, surveillance-style image. It was of a woman, and despite the slight blur, he would have recognized her anywhere. Isabel. Alive. Standing outside a hospital, wearing a long coat and with a hand on her stomach, as if she had been pregnant. Alexander's vision blurred. "What the hell is this?" Liam hesitated. "That was taken 3 months before she disappeared." Alexander's heart pounded. 3 months before her supposed accident. His hands clenched the edges of the desk. Why was she at a hospital? "That's the part we don't know yet," Liam admitted. "There's no medical record under her name. Either she used an alias, or someone erased it." Alexander's grip tightened. Someone had covered something up, and he was going to find out who. But first, he needed to see Elle. Elle opened the door, surprised to see Alexander Wolfe standing in the hallway of her tiny apartment building. He looked utterly out of place, billionaire perfection in a black coat and tailored suit, his blue eyes intense as they locked onto hers. Her pulse kicked up. "Alexander? Can we talk?" His voice was low, urgent. Elle hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." He entered, scanning the modest space, cozy, filled with books, warm lighting, and a faint scent of vanilla. It was nothing like his penthouse. But somehow, it felt safe. "You found something, didn't you?" she asked, her arms crossing. He turned to her, his expression unreadable. "My investigator found a photo of Isabel." Elle inhaled sharply. "Wait, what?" "She was alive," Alexander said, his voice edged with frustration and something deeper, pain. 3 months before she supposedly died. And she might have been pregnant. Elle's breath caught. Pregnant? She was standing outside a hospital, holding her stomach. "I don't know what it means yet, but someone buried the truth. Someone wanted me to believe she was gone long before she actually was." Elle's head spun. The more she learned, the more tangled this story became. "But why would she leave you?" Elle asked softly. "Why wouldn't she tell you?" Alexander ran a hand through his hair. "That's what I intend to find out." Silence stretched between them. Elle studied him, his clenched jaw, the exhaustion behind his eyes. This man, so powerful and untouchable in the business world, was unraveling right in front of her. And for some reason, she ached to take away his pain. "Alexander," she whispered. He turned to her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath hitch. "I don't know why fate gave you that ring," he murmured, stepping closer. "But I do know that ever since I saw it on your hand, I haven't been able to think of anything else." Elle swallowed hard. "Alexander, I..." Before she could say another word, he reached for her hand, slowly, carefully. His fingers traced the ring on her finger, a touch so soft it sent a shiver down her spine. "It doesn't make sense," he murmured. "You shouldn't have this. And yet, when I see it on you, I can't ignore the way it makes me feel." Elle's heart pounded. She knew this was dangerous, getting close to him, falling into his world. But as his fingers lingered against hers, as his piercing gaze held her captive, walking away didn't feel like an option. She exhaled shakily. "Alexander, what are we doing?" His jaw tightened. "I don't know." A beat of silence. Then, without warning, Alexander reached up and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering. "Tell me to leave," he murmured, his voice like silk, "and I will." She should. She really, really should. But instead, her voice came out as barely a whisper. Stay. Elle woke up to the smell of coffee and something warm against her skin. Her eyes fluttered open, only to realize that she was lying against Alexander Wolf's broad chest, wrapped in his arms. Her heart stuttered. They hadn't crossed any lines last night, just talked, sharing quiet moments and pieces of their past until exhaustion pulled them under. But waking up like this, it felt dangerously intimate. She tilted her head slightly, looking up at him. He was still asleep, his usually guarded face relaxed. For a moment, she let herself memorize the way he looked in the golden morning light. She barely knew this man, and yet somehow, she felt like she had known him forever. Her fingers brushed against the ring on her hand. Was it fate, or was it a mistake? Either way, it was too late. Because Alexander Wolf was no longer just the billionaire who walked into her restaurant. He was the man she was starting to fall for. Elle Carter had never woken up in a billionaire's arms before, but here she was, curled up against Alexander Wolf in the penthouse suite of one of Manhattan's most luxurious hotels. Sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting golden streaks over the expensive sheets, the untouched breakfast tray on the nightstand, and most of all, the man beside her. Alexander stirred beneath her, a quiet breath escaping his lips as his eyes blinked open. For a moment, he looked confused, as if caught between sleep and reality. Then his gaze met Elle's, and something softened in his expression, surprise giving way to warmth. "Morning," he said, voice husky from sleep. Elle smiled faintly. "Morning." He studied her for a beat, his hand brushing a stray curl from her cheek. "Did you sleep at all?" "A little," she admitted. "It's not every night I fall asleep in a billionaire's arms." A wry smile tugged at his lips. "Good to know I still make an impression." She sat up slightly, propping herself on one elbow. "So, what now?" "You have a photo of Isabel, a ring, and 1,000 questions. Where do we even begin?" Alexander sat up, the sheet falling around his waist as he reached for the tablet on the nightstand. He swiped through a few images, stopping at the surveillance photo of Isabel. His expression darkened. "There's something off about this," he said. Liam traced the image back to a private hospital. Not public, not easily accessible. It caters to the ultra-wealthy. Discretion is their selling point. Elle leaned in, her brow furrowing. So she had help. Someone with money. Influence. He nodded. Someone who wanted her hidden. A long silence settled between them. Then Elle whispered, "Do you think she left you to protect you?" Alexander looked at her, startled. "What?" "I mean, maybe someone was threatening her. Maybe she had to disappear to keep you safe." "That's one possibility," he admitted, though skepticism clouded his voice. "But it doesn't explain why she never came back. Why she gave that ring to a stranger. Why she acted like she had lost something she could never reclaim." He stood, suddenly restless, walking toward the window. The Manhattan skyline stretched before him, so vast, so orderly, yet so filled with secrets. "I keep thinking about the pregnancy," he said. "If she was carrying my child." Elle's heart twisted. "You think the baby?" "I don't know," he said quietly. "Maybe there was no baby. Maybe she lost it. Or maybe," he stopped himself, his voice raw. Elle stood and crossed to him, gently placing a hand on his back. "Whatever happened, you'll find the truth. We'll find it." He turned to her, eyes dark with resolve. "I want you with me in this, Elle. But I won't lie, it's going to get dangerous. Whoever covered this up had the resources to make an entire woman disappear. If they know we're digging, they might come after you, too." "I can handle it," she said, her voice firm. He hesitated, then nodded. "All right." Then we start with the hospital. Liam's pulling strings to get us access to their internal records. If Isabel was admitted under an alias, we need to know what name she used. Who paid the bills? And what happened the night she vanished for good? Elle's phone buzzed on the nightstand. She picked it up, eyes widening as she read the message. It's from my grandmother. Alexander raised an eyebrow. Margaret? She says someone was asking about the ring last night. A man. Tall. Expensive coat. Said he was a collector. Alexander's eyes narrowed. Too much of a coincidence. She nodded. Margaret said he gave her a bad feeling. She lied and told him she'd sold the ring years ago. Alexander's mind whirred. If they're tracking the ring, they're already a step ahead. We need to move fast. Just then, a sharp knock sounded on the hotel suite door. Alexander stiffened. Elle tensed. Another knock. Slower this time. He moved to the door, motioning for Elle to stay back. He opened it a crack. Standing there was a woman. Late 40s. Elegant. And hauntingly familiar. Alexander's blood froze. Elle, he said without turning. Come here. Slowly. Elle stepped forward, her breath catching when she saw the woman. The woman smiled faintly. Hello, Alexander. His voice was ice. Who are you? The woman tilted her head. Isabel's sister. The woman stood in the doorway with a composure that sent a chill through Elle's spine. She had the same striking cheekbones as Isabel, the same piercing eyes, only hers held none of the warmth Elle had seen in the photos. Just cold calculation. I'm Celeste, the woman said smoothly. Isabel's older sister. Alexander's gaze sharpened. Isabel never mentioned a sister. Celeste smiled thinly. She wouldn't have. We were estranged. Elle stepped forward, arms crossed. And now you're suddenly interested in a ring she gave away years ago. Celeste's eyes flicked to her. You must be Elle. The girl who stumbled into all this by accident. Alexander stepped between them. Say what you came to say. Then leave. Celeste entered without permission, brushing past him. Fine. Let's stop pretending this is a simple story about a lost ring or a grieving husband. She turned, her eyes flashing. Isabel didn't die in that car crash. She faked it. Alexander staggered back as if struck. What? Celeste's tone was flat. She disappeared with help, from me. I arranged everything. The accident, the body switch, the new identity. All of it. Elle's voice trembled. Why? Celeste's eyes softened, for the first time showing something close to regret. Because she was pregnant. And terrified. Alexander sank into a chair, eyes hollow. She told me everything. Why wouldn't she tell me? Celeste looked at him with a complex expression. Because you were the threat. Silence fell like a guillotine. What are you talking about? Alexander asked, voice sharp. She loved you, Alexander. But your world? The people you were entangled with? The business deals, the enemies? You had no idea how many people were watching her. Using her to get to you. She got pregnant, and everything changed. She wanted out. Alexander's face paled. I would have protected her. Maybe, Celeste said. But she didn't want to raise a child in fear. So she ran. And I helped. Elle spoke carefully. What happened to the baby? Celeste exhaled. She gave birth. A little girl. Healthy. Safe. But then, something went wrong. Alexander stood abruptly. Where is she now? Celeste hesitated. Then she said, almost gently, Isabel died a year after the birth. Cancer. Fast-moving. She didn't tell anyone. Didn't want the child to grow up around pain. When she knew her time was short, she asked me to place her daughter in the care of someone she trusted. Elle blinked. Wait, are you saying? Yes. Celeste looked straight at her. The girl is you, Elle. The room spun. Alexander stared at Elle, stunned. That's impossible. But the pieces were snapping into place. Elle's resemblance to Isabel. The ring. Her grandmother's secrecy. The strange familiarity Alexander had felt from the moment he saw her. Elle's voice was barely audible. My parents died in an accident when I was 3. My grandmother raised me. Celeste nodded. That's the story she gave you. But Isabel, your mother, made sure you'd never be found. Never be pulled into Alexander's world. Elle stepped back, shaking her head. No. That can't be. You're saying he's your father, Celeste said. Alexander staggered as the weight of it hit him. No. I would have known. I would have felt it. Celeste only gave him a sorrowful look. You always did. You just didn't know what it meant. Elle felt the room close in, her thoughts spiraling. Her whole life had been a lie, her name, her past, the woman who raised her. And Alexander, the man she had been falling for, was her father. She turned, nausea twisting in her stomach, running for the door. But Alexander was already there, blocking her path, not with force, but grief. Elle, he said, his voice broken. I didn't know. She looked at him through tear-filled eyes. That doesn't change what this is. What it means. I need time, she whispered. To think. To feel anything other than betrayal. And she walked out. 2 months later. The air in Brooklyn was warmer now. Spring had crept in quietly, pushing winter out. Elle stood on the steps of Margaret's brownstone, watching as cherry blossoms danced in the breeze. In her hands, she held a letter, faded, creased, but unmistakably real. It was from Isabel. Written just before her death. My darling Elle. If you're reading this, it means the world found you. Or you found it. I hope you never regret learning the truth, even if it hurts. I chose to protect you in the only way I could. But if the day comes when you want to know your father, he's not just a powerful man. He's a good man. And he loved me, even when I couldn't stay. Elle closed her eyes. When she opened them, she saw a figure waiting near the curb. Alexander. He looked different, worn, quieter. But his eyes met hers with the same intensity. She walked to him slowly. You got my message, she asked. He nodded. I didn't think you'd ever want to see me again. I didn't, she said. But then I realized. I didn't just lose my past. I gained something too. He swallowed hard. I don't know how to be a father. I never got the chance. She reached out and took his hand. Then we start from here.